You're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. Whilst in Israel recently, I heard about a group of young Messianic Jewish believers who had travelled to Germany to meet with a group of young German Christians, and together they visited Auschwitz, the concentration camp in Poland, where so many Jewish people died during the Second World War. The team was led by David van Owerkerk from the Beit Asaph Messianic congregation in Netanya, Israel. I was keen to find out more, so began by asking David how it all began.
We started out actually here in Israel. We had a 2-day boot camp here with the participants, 12 Israelis between 15 to 19, plus me and another leader. And in this boot camp, we were preparing them in a local congregation in Haifa. From there out, we went to Yad Vashem to visit the Holocaust Museum, and we prepared ourselves spiritually for the time in Germany. So after those 2 days, we flew together to Stuttgart, where we were welcomed by the leader there, Sophie Rabenstein, and she took us into the congregation in Weinstadt, where we started our trip.
David, I want you to tell me who you took on this trip, how you picked them.
We typically like to choose candidates, up to 12 from different congregations in Israel, between 15 to 18, 19 years old. And in the process, we were in contact with some pastors throughout Israel. This year, we took some from the Ethiopian congregation in Haifa, Ratzon Ha'el, and I interviewed them there. There were 2 kids, the daughter of the pastor and another boy. And we also went to the congregation in Carmiel called Keilat HaDerech, and I took 3 kids from there. The rest were all from Beit Asaph this year. There were 6 girls. This was amazing to be able to connect with the girls from our own congregation and give them the opportunity to go.
And tell me about the children, the young people in Germany. How were they picked?
They were all from the congregation in Weinstadt, where we were hosted.
So you got on the plane, you arrived, they were meeting for the first time. What was it like?
The moment we entered into the building, it was very sweet. They prepared all these cookies that said Yad B'Yad, and they were all giving us hugs and introducing themselves, and just we felt so welcome after so many hours of travel. It felt like the group instantly connected with each other.
You were on quite a challenging program. What were you planning to do?
Well, the core vision of the program, hence the name Yad B'Yad, which means hand in hand, is together with Israelis and Germans to build a strong team in a number of days when we were hosted in Germany, and then to go into Auschwitz together, into Auschwitz I and Auschwitz-Birkenau in a duration of 2 days, and then hand in hand to walk over the train rails. That's the main vision of Yad B'Yad, and then everything that happens around it is all working up to that point of reconciliation.
I mean, it's remarkable that you had young German Christians who were prepared to do this. Can you just describe the mindset, what they feel about their own history and heritage?
Yes, you can tell that generally there's a sense of shame and guilt. Although, I have to say, with this younger generation, you see it less and less. And it seems like the issue of the Holocaust feels less relevant for the young teenagers nowadays. So there's a whole new set of challenges with connecting with a team from there. Yes, there is a sense of shame and guilt, but also it's more about how we can relate it to our own personal lives now today, what makes this trip relevant, and how can we use what God did in this trip for the rest of our lives.
And the Jewish young people that you took, had any of their families been impacted or affected by the Holocaust in any way?
Yes, there were some in our group that were strongly impacted, that had members from their family killed in the Holocaust. Some actually in concentration camps, and others in the ghetto. And we know that this had a very strong impact on this family and even on their move to Israel.
So you got to know each other for a few days, I guess, and then the day came when you were preparing to visit Auschwitz and Birkenau. So talk me through what happened.
Interestingly enough, all was fun and games, so to speak, when we were in Germany and learning and having just a good time growing, and it just seemed to go very smoothly. But the moment we crossed into the border of Poland with our bus, it was just like the group dynamics changed and the atmosphere changed. Suddenly the kids were feeling sick, having panic attacks, anxiety attacks, headaches, stomach aches. Something really changed the moment that we entered with the bus. The reality of the trip dawned upon the group in a new way. This continued for the duration of our time in Poland. We know that some of the members of the group learned about spiritual warfare in a way that they were never accustomed to. The first evening, this is what we heard separately afterwards, but the first evening some of them just came into their room and just started weeping and uncontrollably. And God was speaking to them about verses from James about resisting the devil and he will flee from you, and other verses that were reminded from teachings that they had in the past, and just taking a stand. And for them, already this was a very powerful experience. And this is still before we went into Auschwitz. The preparation that it took for these kids to prepare themselves to enter into this place of death was very, very transformative.
Did some of them suddenly say, we don't want to do this, we don't want to get off the bus, it's not for us?
Yes, actually. We had a couple of them that said that we are too young, we don't feel like we are spiritually mature enough. And there were a few points where some of them were actually getting so sick, I was thinking about calling an ambulance. And it was so real and so intense. But something really beautiful happened in those moments when we first arrived into Krakow and just getting settled. We saw that the groups, both the Germans and the Israelis, were praying for each other, holding each other's hands, hugging and just crying in each other's arms. And they were using each other as for support and leaning into each other, and something we didn't see earlier on in the trip as much, but something that God prepared them for, to just find comfort in the partners that they were assigned with. So this is really special.
So then you got off the coach and you started to walk towards the entrance.
Yes, so actually on the first day that we were going into Auschwitz, we went into Auschwitz I, where we learned about the history of the Holocaust. We went into the museum. We had a tour guide who was just amazing. And we were just getting a little bit more an idea of context of where we were and preparing for the second day. On the second day, when we arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau, we started with the bus ride there, and we asked all of the partners to fill in a little white sheet that we gave them with some impressions that they had, a Bible verse or something that the Lord was speaking, which we would ceremonially put together and light a candle on top of this next to the crematorium. So this was already a sense of preparation that came over the group and the teams that we had. For myself personally as well, as we were driving on our way to Auschwitz-Birkenau, I was looking outside and it was just such a warm day with a blue sky, and not what we would typically expect from when we were going into a place of such horror. But as I was looking out of the window and seeing all the green and all the trees, the Lord started to speak to me about the verse from Isaiah 61 about beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, praise for heaviness, and how this is all for His glory. So this was a preparation and something that the Lord was doing in my heart. When we arrived at Auschwitz, we were starting our first part of the ceremonial tour by entering into the gates of Auschwitz and worshiping there in German and in Hebrew, and all holding hands while doing so. And I think that in the process of worshiping together in our languages, we saw this throughout the whole trip, that this is something that was unifying so much because it became more about God than about the conflict that we were in. And this was a very, very powerful way to start. After this, we went hand in hand. We told all the kids to get their partners and to hold hands and to start walking over the train rails for a couple hundred meters, and then afterwards to find a place in the grass and to cry together, to share, to pray. And they did this. The leaders walked in front and the kids took their time. With no rush, they could walk over these rails. And the responses that we saw in the kids were varied, but very emotional. Generally, one of the leaders who has been many times on Yad B'Yad said that this was the most emotional Yad B'Yad he's ever been on. And we could really see that in both in the Germans and in the Israelis, God was doing a deep, deep work in their hearts. The message of the gospel and reconciliation suddenly comes so close, and you can visibly see it on them as they are communicating, which is really, really powerful.
So what are you hoping will be the lasting effect, the fruit from such a trip?
Actually, right after we did this, there was an important part of the ceremony also. Can I explain a little bit about this as well? So after we went hand in hand, we went to the crematorium to do the second part of the ceremony, where all the kids could put the cards that they prepared under the candle. And there again, we worshipped, and we were all sharing in the forum of the group. The teams could share, individually they could share. And we gave them a moment to speak about what was on their heart. This was really powerful, both from the Germans and the Israelis. We saw that if one person in the group started crying, everyone started crying. This was the motto, actually, of this year's trip. if one person cries, everyone cries. So I think that already says it all. But after this, we went on to the third part of the ceremonial tour, which I think was really impacting as well. And it was connected to the flags. We brought flags from Israel and from Germany. And first what we did is that the Israelis that brought their flags from Israel, we asked them to give their flags ceremonially to their German partners as a sign of forgiveness and a sign of connection. And this was very emotional, very powerful. And then after this, we tied together a big Israeli flag to a big German flag. And we asked some of the kids from the group, both German and Israelis, to put it over their shoulders and to walk back to the entrance of the camp. And so many people were looking at us and taking pictures as we were doing this, just questions and stunned, and we could hear them talking about how is this possible. And this was also very, very spiritual walk back for the group, learning about sacrifice, learning about the sacrifice that he made for us. And we finished off our time in Auschwitz-Birkenau, symbolically as well, by the entrance of the camp again, where we had the Lord's table, and we remembered that the blood of Jesus covers all things, and how it's what unites us as well. So I think this really was a finishing touch on our time there, and just I think what happened there really sealed in the hearts of every participant there, and we know it did. As they shared their testimonies, we know that some of them had born again experiences, that they gave their lives and they rededicated themselves to the Lord. Some of them, they experienced inner healing, and others have experienced God's love for the first time.
You've been listening to David van Owerkerk from Israel. What a story of reconciliation. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work through our bi-monthly newsletter, including news about our upcoming tours, please either visit our website www.olivetreefund.org or write to me, Julia Fisher, OTRF, PO Box 402, Billingshurst, RH14 4BQ in the UK. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.